Hi, thank you for watching this video. We put this together to give you an introduction to what common pieces might be available in different offer letters that you're likely to receive in your next or first technical role. And we want to make sure that you've seen some of the common terminology, you know where to ask questions, and you've identified maybe attributes and aspects that would be the right fit for you, that you want to make sure are part of any job offer that you have going forward. So sit back, enjoy the next half hour learning about what's in an offer letter and getting the information you need to get what you need. First, let's establish why this topic is important. So a study cited by the International Foundation of Employee Benefits Plans found that only 19% of employers believe their employees fully understand their benefits. And that's concerning. If you don't fully understand your benefits, you risk leaving money on the table by, for example, paying taxes on benefits that you're not using, or paying too much for services or other perks that your employer may have covered. Another risk is your employer might stop offering a benefit that you need now or in the future because employees don't know about it and don't use it. As a candidate, you also may not have a clear picture of how a job offer will actually impact your life if you're not factoring in things like healthcare premiums, retirement savings, or stock awards. So you can only get this full picture by gathering and understanding every part of a job offer and an employee benefits package. So here are our goals, which are basically to help you get familiar with the major building blocks in a tech offer and then a typical tech offer, and then you can decide what you need based on your living situation, where you live, whether you have dependents, and things like that. What we're not going to do is tell you what to ask for or negotiate in your offer discussions. We're really just here to show you the elements so you can decide, research what you want to learn more about and decide which pieces you need. So today's goal will cover all of these topics. Some will go faster than others. First, we'll talk about how to use the information here. So you'll have an idea of when to refer back to different sections and get a deeper dive. Then we'll go kind of through all the pieces of an offer letter, pay, bonuses, and stock. We'll walk through each of those and how to decipher what they mean and start to build those into kind of a forecasting system to what you might be earning in your first year, second year, and beyond. Then we'll go through healthcare. This is another one where those, obviously pay and bonuses and stock kind of really impact your finances. Healthcare, how it's offered to you, the options you have also can majorly change your finances. So that's another section we'll want to kind of highlight the different options, different structures that an employer might offer, so you know what those would really look like for you. Retirement savings, additional insurance, time off, those are pretty self-explanatory, but we'll talk through the different plans that you might see in paperwork. And the other common benefits, again, those will vary by employer, but we want you to have an idea of what's out there. Some of those might join the list of things you might ask for in the future, or you might not realize until you learn more about them that they are on your priority list. All of this is going to be in service of helping you look at an offer letter. We've got a total mock-up here, but it closely mirrors some leading company offer letters. We'll walk through each of these pieces so you know what information you might find in the letter itself versus information you might need to get separately through a recruiter or learn more about online. So we'll walk through this offer letter piece by piece. No need to read it now. We'll go through what everything here means. So let's walk through how we recommend you use the info in this video about pay and benefits as you go through the recruiting cycle and beyond. For one thing, you can and should do research on the employers that you apply to learn about the employee experience, especially commentary from current and past employees about how pay and benefits compare across the industry. We listed a couple of sources here like Blind and Glassdoor, but since I used to be a recruiter, I can warn you that the numbers and details on those platforms, they're not verified, they're self-reported. They may be inaccurate, they may be outliers, so note what people say online, but know that the real info and what's actually accessible to companies and employers or recruiters might be different. But in general, as you're applying for jobs now and in the future, learn from employees if the culture and benefits seem to support the lifestyle that you're looking for. There's a lot of commentary about an employer offering free food and like laundry services, but everybody works 12-hour days and you're not interested in that, you might want to dig deeper before you decide to apply. Now, during interviews, of course, your top priority is to show up well, but you also always want to have questions for your interviewers about the job content, what the team is like, things like that. And this is also where you can learn from your interviewers about anything that's a deal breaker for you. So for example, if the job posting says the role is hybrid, but you personally can only commute up to a couple of times per week because of other things in your life, you should ask at this interview stage, what hybrid actually looks like for this role. Does it mean 1 day a week? Is it 4 days a week? Is it really on-site full-time? Find this out now, and also pay close attention if the recruiter says one thing in your first round interview with them, and the hiring manager says something different in that next interview. So note for the information staying consistent the whole way through. Now, the info we give in this presentation will be especially helpful when you have an offer, of course. And later on, we'll show an example of how you can use a spreadsheet or something similar to calculate how much money you might be bringing in for the next several years, using the details that were given in your offer letter and what you might have learned about other details in your interviews. But most importantly, once you have an offer letter in hand, you should absolutely get the info you need to kind of round out your vision and ensure this job is financially viable for you or for someone in a similar life situation. We'll talk more about that. And finally, once you're employed, keep learning about your benefits. Don't leave money on the table or miss out on discounts or programs that go away because not enough people are using them. Stay on top of what's available and don't be afraid to do research and ask for something new. Now, let's go back to the sample offer letter we showed on the agenda slide. Here is the piece of the letter that outlines your base pay, and there's a lot of information packed into the highlighted section here. Let's break it down. The pre-tax base salary is the amount of money that the company sends your way. In a way, this is the total cash they set aside for you. But that's minus appropriate taxes and deductions. We've probably all looked at a paycheck and said, hey, where did my money go? So just like any job, your bank account will not receive the full $80,000 in pay, since taxes and things like health insurance premiums and retirement savings will come out before you actually get your paycheck. So just a reminder, you don't get to spend the full $80,000 in this offer letter, I'm sorry. The final piece of this one highlighted sentence is the payment schedule. In this case, they say it's semi-monthly. So, okay, let's say you've just received this offer letter. Here's what you want to get clear on next. As much as you can, try to estimate what percentage of your pay will likely be withheld for taxes. You can look up what tax bracket you'd be in at irs.gov. That gives you an idea of how much money you actually will have available for living expenses. Second, ask your recruiter to clarify the payment schedule and when you're likely to receive your first paycheck. Based on your start date too. All of these are estimates at this point. Semi-monthly usually means 2 paychecks a month, but does this company mean that you'll get one around the 15th and the end of the month, or is it every 2 weeks? Like that can make a difference. And if possible, try to estimate your start date, like we said, and ask the recruiter how that falls in the payroll cycle. So you have an idea of how long it'll take to get there if you've got rent coming due or student loans need to get paid back. And then finally, start to imagine your future. Your recruiter might be able to give you a range of what raises and cost of living increases might look like. And it's good to know if maybe the company has paused these increases because of the economy, or if raises are possible more than once a year, or whatever the situation might be. And now we'll talk about bonuses. These may or may not be included in your offer letter, depending on the type of organization you're joining, but it's important to understand what's involved if this is part of your offer. Here's what the sample offer letter says. $5,000 paid in your first month, and if you voluntarily leave within 12 months, you need to repay it. Let's break it down. The timeline is you get it in your first month of work. The restriction is you have to pay it back if you leave voluntarily within a year. If your offer letter doesn't say voluntarily or clarify that you lose it if you resign as opposed to being laid off or fired, ask your recruiter to clarify those circumstances. And don't forget, this is taxable. So confirm with the recruiter if the amount that they quote here is pre or post-tax. If they're giving you $5,000 pre-taxes, then just like your paycheck, the company pays out $5,000, but you probably won't get $5,000 in your paycheck or in your bank account because some percentage is withheld for taxes. So keep that in mind when you make plans for that bonus. Then the offer letter here also describes how you might earn performance-based bonuses. And there's a lot here, so we'll take it line by line. How often and when? This says annual, so yearly. And if you skip ahead in the paragraph, you'll see it's awarded, the money comes to you in September of each year. So some jobs and companies will pay out more frequently, like quarterly, and some don't have a bonus plan at all. So make sure you understand what's offered for you. How are bonuses calculated? We'll tease this out. It's performance-based, so better performance should mean more money for you. And 0 to 20% of your base salary based on your performance based in the prior fiscal year. So one follow-up question is to ask your recruiter is, whose performance determines how much bonus you earn? Is it your individual performance, or is it your team collectively, or does everyone get a share of the company's profits, or some other basis there? And then what is the target? This is asking what average looks like expected value. So where you would land if you have a solid year, but you don't knock it out of the park or have a tough time. This can help you estimate what your finances might look like in a normal year, typical year. So you're not making future plans assuming that you'll get 20% every time. And again, taxes, it's always taxes. You can calculate how much you might earn in a typical year, but as I said before, don't assume that entire amount will be deposited in your bank account. And finally, are things different on this bonus thing when you're just getting started? There's a clue to that in the offer letter. Your bonus is prorated based on how much of the fiscal year you were employed. That's what this case is. So if you join halfway through the fiscal year, in this case, then your first bonus will be prorated, meaning that you'll get half of what your bonus would have been. And a ramp-up period might happen in a role where the company gives new hires a pass, meaning they could get a set percentage as their bonus for the first period, since they're still learning and not yet totally productive. I've seen this especially in sales or customer-facing roles where your bonus is based on the revenue that you bring in. And that gives you a chance to focus on learning instead of being pressured to immediately be successful. Okay, so stock. Like bonuses, this may not be included in every offer, but our goal is to give you an outline of what it might look like, so you can do more research into the right things if you need to. Here's what the offer letter says. For joining the company, they'll give you a number of shares worth $10,000, but you'll get it gradually over time. 40%, or in this case $4,000, at your first work anniversary, then 15% each for the next 4 years. So it takes 5 years for you to get that total stock award. Now, in addition, the second highlighted part says that you might get more stock as part of your annual performance review, similar to your annual bonus on the previous slide. This one will take 4 years for you to get the full stock award, a quarter or 25% each year. So you've got a couple of different timelines described here, and we'll start to visualize that in a future slide. But first, let's back up. Why is this part of the offer? Why would a company offer stock or other similar things like options where you can't use the money immediately? Well, it's an incentive for you to stick around. Usually, if you leave the company before they've given you all the stock they promised, that's it. You left that money behind. But having this long-term future reward also encourages you to look ahead to the future and make business decisions that will help that stock be worth even more when you eventually get it. The thinking here is that employees who are thinking about what's best for the business both now and in the future typically make more responsible decisions than if you're just focused on getting the most revenue next month. And so this offer letter is an example of one type of stock awards, RSUs in this case. On the next slide, we'll do a high-level overview of other programs that companies will have in place to transfer stock to employees. And here is the list of stock categories. So each of these is a type of award that might be coming to you from a company. If you are not working for a company that has stock options or offers or awards, anything like that, you can skip this section. But really the idea is that you have keywords that will point you in each direction so you can quickly identify what kind of award is coming your way. And like I said, start to get an idea of how to calculate the current value and the potential future value of this. So key takeaways listed here: learn what's offered, read their specific guidelines carefully, The example you saw on the previous slide is just one type of award. As I called out in the slide, that was a description of a restricted stock unit, RSUs, where they issue a number of shares or a dollar amount worth of stock. They'll tell you when you'll get access to that stock. And bigger companies tend to use that category more frequently. The more important things here are just to take a look at the titles, and then when you're taxed, what happens to the company, that's useful to find out, and that'll be specific to your the type of award you're receiving and the restrictions that the company puts on it. So you'll want to make sure you're reading everything very carefully. That is the main takeaway here. So far, we've talked about pay, bonuses, and stock, and these would make up the core of a job offer, assuming the employer offers all three. So before we dive in on benefits, let's put these more kind of quantifiable, number-heavy pieces together so that you can start to visualize your finances with this offer. And that'll help you see where you might want to negotiate. For example, if it makes more sense for you to ask for a higher signing bonus for immediate expenses instead of asking for a higher base, which spreads out the increase. And there's no one right way to map out your offer, but here's an example that tends to work for me. I use Excel. You could use Google Sheets or something similar to just kind of map out year by year what your total, again, those explicit dollar amounts might look like. In this example, I've entered the numbers from the sample offer letter, starting with the base pay, which is highlighted there in yellow, which we're going to assume grows by some percentage each year. And then the signing bonus, and then the annual estimated annual bonus based on what the recruiter said the target is, the on-hire stock award, which is divided over 5 years, your first 5 years, and then finally the potential annual stock award, which which, as we discussed, is divided over 4 years. We talked about that from the offer letter. But remember that you get a new 4-year award each year, which is why we have multiple lines here. And so if this layout doesn't work for you, that's fine. The most important thing is for you to find a way to map it out for your first few years so you have hard numbers to look at. Even knowing that they're estimates, we're not accounting for taxes here. And this is also just a good approach if you're considering multiple offers, or if you're in the future looking to move into a new job and thinking about what that would look like compared to continuing where you are, because it kind of lets you start to compare apples to apples for each year, especially those total cash and stock estimates at the bottom. And then you can think about the benefits on top of that. Okay, so now that we've talked about numbers, we're going to move into some of the benefits that might not initially have dollar amounts attached, especially in the offer letter, but they're also super important for your quality of life as an employee. We'll start with healthcare and then talk about retirement savings, time off, and other benefits. So first, let's see what the sample offer letter says about healthcare benefits. And all it says is employee benefit plans. That's not a lot of detail. So what you'll want to kind of clarify with your recruiter about healthcare specifically, well, backing up, I strongly recommend that you have this conversation at the offer stage about what all the plans look like. Even if you're typically a healthy person, don't expect to lean a lot of doctors. You never know, when you don't want to regret not paying attention to this, as you're onboarding or if you're choosing to whether to join the employer. So depending on the employer, you might have different pricing and coverage options for medical versus dental and vision. And so, I don't know why your teeth and eyes are different parts and insured differently, but here we are. But know that these are the main 3 major categories. And so assuming the employer has different plans for kind of each of these, ask your recruiter for information about your plan options, where the monthly premiums for each, how much you're paying, just to have the coverage, the timeline for when you might start being covered. Is it from your first day? Is it from a month in? Any cost or plan changes if you are enrolling dependents like a spouse or children, and what out-of-pocket and deductible expenses you'd be responsible for. So you'd have to hit a certain amount of money that you're paying towards all these healthcare expenses before insurance kicks in. So I'll tell you a quick story. In my previous career, this information wasn't officially available to candidates who had offers until after they'd signed the offer letter. But I made it a point as the recruiter to send the benefits info, the official brochure that we sent to employees, as they were deciding whether to sign up, because as we know, medical expenses can make such a huge difference. And some of them explicitly told me what they were looking to get covered, what they had going on in their family, and made it clear that being able to continue with their providers was going to be a deciding factor. So if that's a similar case for you, even if it's not, just learn what your options are and what those monthly expenses might look like, what you might have to pay for out of pocket if you did have some sort of major health need. So get that information. And if your recruiter or hiring manager won't share this info during the offer stage, or if they'll only say their benefits are competitive, honestly, that might be a bit of a red flag to talk through, that either the options aren't great, and it might be time to politely push back until you get more details. Next up is retirement savings. So depending on your age, this might not seem like an immediate concern, but I'm here to tell you that a little knowledge now and picking the right savings rate for your life stage can really change the quality of life for future you. I'm not going to read these plan descriptions as they build. I'm just going to put them up so you can see the categories, recognize them, and then do more research once you find out what kind of plan your employer uses. Overall, the goal for you is to strike a balance between having what you need now to pay for your bills and stuff, while building a nest egg for the future. Now, a huge benefit of retirement savings is the thing we keep coming back to, taxes, woo. And a lot of your savings options reduce how much income tax you owe each year. Tax advantaged, you're incentivized to put money away for the future by taxes not being due on what you're putting away in many cases. So to summarize, don't write off retirement savings if you're not planning to retire for years or decades even. Set it up as you join the company. Check in on the options to make sure that you're saving optimally, and ideally that account will just kind of build on its own. You don't have to think about it too hard. And a couple of reminders here as you learn and then join an employer that you'll want to make sure that this money stays yours when you leave, so that you get to take that account with you if you move to a different employer or leave to do your own thing. Also make sure if you had a 401k or something that was set up for you at a previous job, one, make sure you know where that money is and how to get to it. And it also might make sense, depending on the deal you get with your next employer, to roll all that money into one account, so it's all in one place. So just at the very least, though, don't lose track of it. Okay, and so this is another set of insurance plans that are additional. Again, these might be very, very important for you to know about, depending on just how things go for you. We'll keep this fairly quick because you don't necessarily need to go super deep on everything right now, but know that some employers do offer additional kinds of insurance that you can sign up for if you want to. Some companies will sign you up for life insurance or things like that, short-term disability insurance by default, but the amount of additional funds that you put into those might be up to you. Do your research on what is optional and what isn't, because those may also be taxable, and so that would change how much money that you are keeping from your paycheck. And decide for your personal situation if you want to increase the coverage, like I mentioned, by putting more money into those plans. But most importantly, when those are set up, make sure that you're deciding who the beneficiaries are and keeping up with that. So if you start, for example, if you started your job and you were single, you might have a beneficiary be one person. If you end up in a relationship or married or anything like that, where you'd want to change the beneficiaries, to have a child, want to add them to the list, make sure you're keeping up with those plans as you have life changes. And review all the options regularly to see if it makes sense to add another plan or drop another plan. Okay, and we're back to the offer letter here. So believe it or not, the last few slides on healthcare, retirement savings, additional insurance, those were all covered in that one line about employee benefit plans with air quotes. You can see why it's important to read the offer letter so thoroughly and have your conversation with your contact, your recruiter, about unpacking the stuff that's kind of quickly referenced and moved on. So time off here, not surprisingly, includes kind of what you pretty much think it is. It's paid time off. What's interesting is that the offer letter here only really talks about that vacation time. Because with some employers, that amount of sick leave or parental leave or paid holidays is actually buried in that benefits info, that brochure that some employers don't, again, necessarily share until you sign the offer. So again, follow up to get more details if it's not spelled out in the offer letter. Here are the questions that I recommend you get clarity on when you receive an offer about paid time off. I won't read through, every single question since you can pause and take a screenshot. But the general theme here is to get the full picture of what's offered so you can start to plan your life. The other big thing here is that companies like Microsoft and others are starting to move to a more unlimited or discretionary time off model. In those cases, we really recommend you do a little bit of detective work with the recruiter and ideally a couple of current employees too, about what that really looks like in practice. What's the culture around using your unlimited time off? Anecdotally, as more companies start to do that, the employees, in some cases, report that unlimited for their team actually means they take less vacation, since there's less pressure to use up your vacation account before the end of each year. So you're not feeling pressured to use all of your vacation, which means you end up not taking as much if it's not really baked in or seems mandatory. It can really depend on the company or even the individual team or manager for what normal looks like and if it's encouraged, and where people kind of typically land. In this case, I would ask to talk to somebody on the team, either through the recruiter or kind of find them through LinkedIn, see what they think, and if it's a culture that you want to be a part of. And finally, this is the grab bag of other benefits that might not be explicitly called out in an offer letter, but they can make a huge difference in your day-to-day life. This list here on the right is not exhaustive. It's just a sampling of, common perks, but there are probably many others I didn't think of. I'm not going to cover each one in detail, but I do want to spotlight relocation and remote or flex work because they're kind of two sides of the same coin. They're also both pretty important to nail down during the interview process to make sure you know what you're being considered for and considering. So first, make sure that you check the location listed in the job description, and as you're interviewing, confirm with the recruiter that this is accurate. For example, if the posting says the role is on site, and that's a place you'd have to move to, double check that it's on site, all the time. You have to be there in person, and then ask if relocation is supported. They can, if they can tell you what relocation benefits look like at this stage, like is it a lump sum? Do they help you get connected with a moving company? What does that look like? Even better, but just know that they might not be able to spell out all of the details of support until there's an offer on the table. But if you do get the offer, get all the details on relocation before you accept it, like what they pay for, if you need to move yourself and get reimbursed, do you need to have finished your move by day one, or is there some leeway, all of that. I will say in my previous role, if somebody was expected to relocate for a job, everything was spelled out as an addendum to the offer letter, so they'd be able to read everything. You should expect that too. And I really recommend that you don't sign an offer until you know what you have to pay for out of pocket, because you need to be able to afford it, right? And this might happen before you get your first paycheck. So even if before you have an offer, though, for a job that you would want to move for, start researching the cost of living to be in that new location. And what will your salary requirements be for a job that's based in downtown Seattle compared to one in Spokane? So no shade to Spokane, I'm sure it's very nice, but the housing prices are pretty different there. So you might be, discussing salary expectations or salary requirements that are different if you're depending on where this job has you being placed. So now, if the job is posted as remote or the option to be remote, just again, check in through the process with the recruiter and the hiring manager, again, in the interviews themselves before you're getting too far, to just confirm that we're all on board with the same, remote culture there, so there are no surprises when there's an offer letter. You can save everyone's time if it turns out they posted the wrong location or they're having second thoughts and actually want you on site, and if you can't do that. And then finally, if it's posted as a hybrid role, ask from the beginning what that looks like, and make sure the recruiter and hiring manager are aligned on whether it's like 4 days in the office or 1 day in the office or just show up for big meetings. What does that really look like? If that impacts your life, ask. And to wrap things up, the most important thing for all of these and other perks is just to do your research. Read everything in a benefits brochure. Use the benefits as you have them. Again, don't forget to keep checking as you're an employee, so you know when new things come online. Protect the ones that you would want to use by using them, and don't be afraid to ask questions. And that's it. Thank you for listening to this video and learning about these topics. It's a lot. Hopefully it is going to help you get grounded and feel a little bit more oriented when you are looking at your first offer letter, or to help you plan the questions you want to ask when you're going through an interview process, or help you highlight what you're looking for when you're deciding where to apply. These might also give you questions to ask of current employees as you network. Please use this information. We give this to you, it's pretty insider info, so you can be well equipped. And we know it's a big process when you are making a final decision about where to work, and we want to make sure that you're making the right choice for you in the short term and long term. So if you have questions about any of this, reach out to the MinT staff. That's what we're here for. And also, we'd love for you to post the questions in public places, like for the whole program, the LinkedIn discussion group, and so that you can ask the questions, people can weigh in if they also have the same question or learn from it as we answer it there as well. And also, if you have feedback on this, please let us know. We are happy to incorporate the feedback to future talks about this kind of topic. And especially as more and more of you take jobs and enter the tech workforce, we want to hear if this information was useful and anything else that you would add. So thank you again.